So the latest public opinion polls say that close to 80% of the public wants the feds to keep, these rules that sort of govern internet usage. It's commonly called net neutrality. But look, still the FCC is really probably going to vote on this December 14th and probably going to repeal those rules. So we've heard lots of arguments supporting net neutrality, supporting those regulations. Those are not hard to find. But it is in this neck of the woods a little harder to find people who can argue for supporting the effort to roll back those rules. But we looked and we found a guy who's going to help us out. Paul Guppy, thank you for being here this morning with the Washington Policy Center, conservative think tank. So just would you kind of help us in headline terms, at least, understand what is the argument for us at home for why the net neutrality rule should be rolled back?
Sure. So it's basically an argument about heavy regulation. So the internet, which is the greatest invention since the steam engine, has created a tremendous revolution and brought great benefit to all of us. And that has all occurred under very light regulation by the federal government. In fact, I know in the tech industry that most companies do not want the federal government to impose rules on them. And the same idea applies to the internet as a whole. The innovation and creativity and attracting the best minds to work on new services for the internet are possible because these companies do not have to go through a heavy regulatory process, an old-fashioned kind of 19th century model where you can't make a single move in changing the internet without approval from the FCC, and those are the rules that they're trying to roll back.
Okay, so I'm going to be honest and say that I think most consumers don't trust the people in general that they're buying their internet from. I mean, there's lots of horror stories about some of those companies and et cetera. So why should they trust them to make decisions that protect me?
Yeah, they shouldn't trust them. So, because companies respond to their consumers, and that's the best kind of competition. You just had a story about Alaska Airlines, about Amazon. They make mistakes, and when those mistakes happen, the companies respond very quickly to fix the problem because they know they cannot have a public image that hurts them. You notice that that happens without having to go through government regulators. And so internet companies, providers, and companies that provide content, they all have an incentive to provide a high-quality service on the internet. Otherwise, we're all going to hear about it. And we don't need heavy government regulation to make that happen.
What about the argument that there isn't enough competition in this space, for example, that I couldn't take my business elsewhere, or I really only have one or two options? If I don't like Comcast, well, I can really only go to CenturyLink or whatever. So what about that argument?
Yeah, so that is a place where government can help in order to make sure that new services, new products are always offered so that people do have maximum choice. Where markets really break down is when there's a monopoly, when either the government says there can only be one provider, or like in the cable industry where they're only licensed. So to move away from that to greater choice allows consumers to decide. The reason I say that is because people automatically think that government is going to be some kind of fair umpire. So who are these angels that are going to make perfect decisions? Regulation just brings politics into operating the internet, and I think that's what the FCC is trying to roll back.
What about the argument that the internet should be treated like a utility, like the water that comes into our house or the power that comes into our house? That seems to make sense to a lot of people.
It does if the thing that you're delivering is just pure water or straight electricity. Those services are very simple, and you notice that if there's ever the slightest problem with any of those, the government hears about it instantly and rushes to fix it. That's what's happening in Puerto Rico, for example. But the internet's not like that. It's very free form, it's very creative, and this is the last place that you would want politics, Washington, D.C., to put in filters to say you have to check a box, you have to get over some barrier, you have to get a license or approval before you can introduce the new iPhone or the new service. And net neutrality sounds great, but I think if we lived under that system, I think we'd regret it after a while.
Paul Guppy with the Washington Policy Center. Thank you very much for being here, helping us hear this side of the argument. I think it is really important. Thank you very much. And of course, we'll keep you posted on what the FCC decides. Back to you guys.